Hi, my name is Patricia, and welcome to another episode in our journey through the Book of Ruth. We are studying the story of two widows looking for rest on the land of Israel. One widow is Jewish and the other is Gentile. Together they represent Israel and the church, and they met a man called Boaz, the man willing to take care of and provide for them. With Ruth, Boaz joined a personal covenant, an alliance to take care of her, and with Naomi, Boaz is discreetly providing provisions through Ruth. He is a figure of Christ and his relationship with each of these women. He represents the relationship of Christ with the chosen people of God and with the Gentile church. While Israel was put aside in a period of judgment, the church entered into a relationship with Christ. But Israel was not forgotten, and in a future time they will also be restored. And a second story about two groups of people who obtain eternal rest by the grace of a common Savior. When we reach to the end of chapter 2, the harvest season is over, and Ruth spent the season working in Boaz's field. The work was easier and rewarding because Boaz made it so. This gave Ruth and Naomi the security they were looking for at that moment. In these details, we also saw a prophecy of God's plan for Israel and the church. Israel would enter a period of judgment as a result of its disobedience to the Old Covenant. During this time, the nation would experience trial after trial, making it weak and reduced in number. During this time, the Gentile church would enter into a relationship with the Messiah of Israel and would do this through the influence of the Jewish people, through their scriptures, and according to their promised covenant. Eventually, the time of judgment of Israel would lead to a time of testimony, and at this moment, the relationship of Christ with Israel and the church will change significantly. And these changes are what we will see next, starting with how the relationship of Naomi and Ruth with Boaz changes in chapter 3. The harvest season is ending and Naomi's war is returned. How will these two widows sustain themselves during the long winter? Will Boaz continue to be kind after the end of the harvest? Without waiting to find out, Naomi began a plan to help Ruth consolidate her relationship with Boaz. Boaz is a relative of Elimelech, and according to the law, he is the man expected to rescue Naomi's family from the widowhood. But, as we learned in the previous episodes, Naomi is too old now to get married, but Ruth is still young enough to get married, and this is Naomi's hope. If Ruth gets married again, then she knows that she will be welcomed in her house too. So Naomi's future is linked to Ruth's, and she explains to her daughter-in-law that her relationship with Boaz is the key to their survival after the end of the harvest. The Hebrew word manoah means rest, and Naomi finally sees a way to get rest, both for her and for Ruth. And for the Hebrew mind, rest is a sacred word. Theologically, we refer to being saved, and the Hebrews speak of having rest, in a way that means much more than just finding a comfortable life. Manoah means to stop worrying, to stop fighting, to stop doubting, to stop being in danger, obtaining a permanent source of blessing. Finding this rest has been Naomi's heart's desire since the beginning of our journey. She followed her husband out of their land in search of a rest from hunger. But his decision led the family to experience one tragedy after another. Meeting Boaz gave them a measure of provision and protection. But this was not yet the true rest. It was a temporary provision at best, and when your hope is in something temporary, it is not a real rest. Many of us know how Naomi and Ruth feel, seeking rest from the disappointments, insecurities of daily life. This rest often seems out of reach. Each phase of our lives is a search for some kind of rest. We strive at school hoping to enjoy the safety of a good job. We get a good job, but we find out that we have to work hours and hours to pay for the things we expect to bring us comfort and rest. We get things, but they never bring the joy we expected. In fact, we fight all our lives to be ready for retirement, which will finally give us some rest, right? And as we approach retirement, we begin to worry that we will not have enough money, enough health, enough friends, or enough purpose. And what should we do then in retirement? If we are not careful, we will fill our lives with efforts and regrets, so that as the end approaches, we will have the impression that life simply passed by. We work all our lives for some kind of rest, but it always seemed to be a little further. Where is the satisfaction, the rest, the security, the freedom of concern that we were striving so hard to obtain? The problem is not that rest cannot be found. The problem is that many of us look for it in the wrong place. In this sense, we are like Naomi's family, working to ensure a rest that could not be found outside the land of Israel. While we wait, let us not make this mistake of thinking that we can speed up God's plan, that we can get true rest according to our own terms. Our true rest, true relief from sin and disappointment, from conflicts and all the longings not fulfilled in our lives, will only come in the eternal kingdom of Christ. If we think we can find this rest while we are still working in the fields of this world, we will distract ourselves from the work of serving Christ, wandering off to other fields, and we will not find that peace we were looking for, because it was never there. It may be that we will not have earthly riches, but we can learn to be content with less, if that means obtaining riches in the kingdom. We will not escape the trials, but we can endure them with joy, patience, knowing that Christ is testing us to know if we are worthy of greater things in the kingdom. So at the beginning of chapter 3, Naomi waited for the whole harvest season for Boaz to fulfill the requirement, levirate marriage, which was the law that required the closest relative to marry the widow who did not have a child. Through a levirate marriage, the widow could have a child and receive the inheritance of her deceased husband. In a patriarchal culture, a husband and a child for this woman would mean true rest. If at least Boaz decided to fulfill the terms of the law, but which of the widows should seek his marriage proposal? Of course, Naomi's fertility days had already passed, so lucky fell on Ruth. So Naomi instructs her to take a bold step to encourage Boaz to assume his responsibilities of levirate marriage. She tells Ruth in verse 2 that Boaz is sleeping in the meadow during the harvest, and at the end of a harvest, the harvesting and sowing began. This is a process of bringing the grains to a hard ground and beating them severely to separate the grains from the straw fruit. Then the remains are lifted into the air so that the wind can blow the lighter straw, while the heavier fruit falls back to the meadow to be collected. This process was usually done at night because in the Middle East, at the end of summer, the hot and dry climate produces a little breeze during the day, but this breeze intensifies at night, ending around midnight. Then in the first half of the night, the harvest began with a beating of the grains, followed by the sowing until about midnight when work ended and a great meal was served. Then the workers slept together to their piles of grains to keep them safe. and Naomi knew very well how the harvest worked. So she saw an opportunity for Ruth to approach Boaz that night and appeal to him to comply with the law. Naomi then instructs her daughter-in-law on how to approach Boaz to encourage him to propose the marriage. First, Ruth had to wash herself, get dressed, and wear her best clothes. These were the steps that a bride took before a wedding. And at that time, a bride was promised to the wedding weeks or months before the wedding day. And during this time, the bride lived separated from the groom in a state of readiness. And on an unannounced day, the groom came to pick her up and escort her to the wedding ceremony prepared in his father's house. So here Naomi is guiding Ruth to present herself as a bride ready for her groom. And at the time of the harvest, the thresh floor was a lively and cheerful place. It was a place where the hard work of a whole year was rewarded. It was a place where Naomi knew that Ruth could find Boaz and find him in a good mood. And she then tells Ruth to wait until the food and drink are finished, and tells her to be patient and wait for the right moment when things calm down. In verse 4, Naomi instructs Ruth to lie down next to Boaz to uncover his feet. Men at that time wore capes or cloaks that covered even their feet, so when they lay down to sleep, they would use their capes as a blanket. And Naomi then instructs Ruth to discreetly lift Boaz's cloak just enough to expose his feet to the fresh air of the desert. At first, this may seem like a strange plan for us, but it means that she is inviting him to a marriage proposal. She is suggesting that when he acts to cover his cold feet, he could also cover hers. Some people take this innocent moment and pervert it, suggesting that Ruth was discovering more than Boaz's feet. But these speculations are not treating the text in an honest way. Naomi was just instructing Ruth to discover Boaz's feet enough to show a tradition and nothing more. He had already started the relationship with Ruth with the previous promises. Boaz did not advance in the relationship because he was considerably older than Ruth and thought she wanted a younger husband. So this attitude of Ruth was a polite way to indicate her willingness to consider the marriage with him. Besides, Naomi instructed the meeting to happen as discreetly as possible. It was dark and many people were gathered in a large area, sleeping in the open air. In these circumstances, Ruth's appearance at Boaz's feet would not attract much attention. And while she discovered Boaz's feet and waited for his answer, no one would know anyway. So Boaz would be free to answer the way he wanted, without worrying about his reputation. Let's read then Ruth chapter 3 verses 6 to 13. So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man. He turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family." "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I'm a guard and redeemer of our family, there is another who is more closely related than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to do his duty as your guardian redeemer, good. let him redeem you. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning." So Ruth did exactly as Naomi had told her. When Boaz woke up and found her there, with her feet uncovered, he asked Ruth who she was and what her intentions were. The fact that he did not realize that it was Ruth from the beginning shows us how dark that night was. Ruth answers if he could spread his cloak over her and adds that he is the redeemer of her family. So in a very polite way, she is saying that she is willing to have Boaz as her redeemer if he is willing to comply with the law in her favor. Naomi trusted Boaz's character to wait for him to do the right thing in the end. And in response to Ruth's offer, Boaz responds with joy, declaring that Ruth's first kindness to him was overcome by this attitude. This may seem an inverted statement, since after all, it was Boaz who showed kindness to Ruth first, didn't he? Yes, but Ruth also showed respect and kindness to him. Her first act of kindness in relation to Boaz was to serve him well as a servant during the whole harvest season, working every day, all day long, returning his trust. And now she was willing to give up younger men and become his wife. In response to Ruth's kindness, Boaz promised to do whatever it took for the marriage to happen. But there was an obstacle. He was not the closest living relative to them. There was another relative who had the right to redeem the widow in Elimelech's family. Now we understand why he had not taken any action in relation to the marriage until that moment. Boaz had to give the closest relative the right to refuse, and he promised Ruth that he would resolve this conflict in the morning. If the closest relative could not comply with the terms of the law of the levirate marriage, then he would take his place and redeem Ruth. One way or another, Ruth and Naomi would finally get the rest they were looking for. Now, going back to our second story within Ruth's story, we remember that Ruth represents the church, the bride of Christ. As Ruth, we are blessed by our relationship with Christ. We cannot fully understand all the glory that our relationship with Christ will bring us over time. As Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9, "However, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, the things God has prepared for those who love Him." Ruth blessed Boaz in response to his goodness, working hard in his field. In the same way, we bless the Lord who extended His grace to us, serving Him faithfully in His field, which is the Word. Where would we be if the Lord had not extended His grace to change the eternal course of our lives? Paul sums it up in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." If you want to say thank you to the Lord, serve Him. Bless Him by renouncing other more attractive husbands or lovers and remaining devout to the only true God. Set aside desires for earthly riches, fame, power, achievements, people, pleasures, and when the harvest comes, we will have our rest, just as these women are about to receive theirs. And may God bless us, and see you in the next episode.